Ed, what are the biggest challenges for London estate agents in 2018, 2019?
Well, I think the challenges now in 2018 are very different from what they've ever been. Certainly people in London have been very lucky. People like me who've been agents in London for the thick end of 40 years have had a fantastic ride. But clearly the ride we're flying too close to the sun, I think the way we'll be describing it in London, and I think certainly the government and the regulators decided that they had to change the way people were. Well, the politicians didn't like the fact that they felt that London was being sold to foreigners. And unfortunately, it's always been like that. And I think that what's unusual about London is that people don't understand that the London market is pulled from the top up. People don't move from Fulham to Chelsea because they need to move from Fulham to Chelsea. They move from Fulham to Chelsea because they want to be able to tell their mates they live in Chelsea. So if you stymie that bit of the market,
yes,
people stop moving up the chain. So the London dynamic is very different from anywhere else in the UK.
Do you think that, because if you look at what's happened to property prices before the 2008 boom, London always did really well compared to the rest of the country, but always kind of went up and down at the same level. But London's kind of taken away. It's almost a different country. Do you think that is because of the foreign money?
Well, I think it's very largely because of the foreign money.
Okay.
I mean, I think that it's given... People forget how much money people who buy property in London put into the economy. They put a huge amount of money. People seem to think that people buy property in London and never live in it. Even if you don't live in it all the time, you still spend money in the local economy. So it did bring a lot of wealth and also gave London a sort of sheen, a world glow. It became the sort of principal world city. And I think it still is. But I think the government's doing its damnedest at the moment to try and take that away, and I think it's really rather sad, actually.
Is that because of votes, or politics, or just thought it was going away from itself, or something else?
Well, I'm not necessarily sure it's votes, but I think there's politics in there somewhere. I mean, the thing is, it's not going to be votes because stopping a few thousand people buying expensive properties in London isn't going to win you any votes, and the majority of people that were buying those properties probably didn't have a vote anyway. It's just that they've decided it's a bit like a sort of piggy bank. They just think that they've got these annualised tax on envelope dwellings, enhanced stamp duty. You know, if you're buying a property in London, it's your second home. You're now paying on a £5 million property the thick end of £50,000 a year just as a tax. You're obviously paying massive amounts of stamp duty. Indeed, it's got to the stage in London now where the stamp duty on a property at, say, £3 million will rent that property for 5 years. So needless to say, the rental property is booming, or the rental market is booming, the sales market isn't.
Where do you think it's going, though, the London market? I'm not talking about the UK, London.
I'm very happy to talk about London because that's what I mainly know about and have been in for a very long time. Ask me in a year's time. Really, I just think it's too early to tell. I think our place in Europe and the world is going to be the same now as it was back in '79 when I started doing this. People came to London for the same reasons they will do, which is that it's an island, it's politically stable, economically stable, and it's the kind of place that anyone in the world wants to live in if the balloon goes up in their own country. So that's never going to change. It's just once you remove that uncertainty, I think people will come back. So I think the future situation is assured. Right now, it couldn't be more uncertain.
Do you think Brexit is an issue, or is it just a go-to excuse that people are blaming general uncertainty on?
I think it's a go-to excuse, but they're right to blame the uncertainty on it. I think that there's been quite a lot of uncertainty building even before Brexit. What was the government going to do next with taxation? You know, how are the taxes going to rise? You know, were we going to get a Labour government? There was lots of uncertainty. Brexit just adds to it.
Do you think that the way the market's going will generally affect estate agents? Do you think there'll be less or more estate agents, and the way they operate?
Well, I think what's happened, obviously, is that transaction levels haven't really gone up and the number of estate agents has exploded. So from that perspective, you now have a situation where there's less of a slice of the pie for everyone, so they're fighting harder and harder, which will bring us, I'm sure, onto fees and all this sort of thing. The problem is barriers to entry. There are no barriers to entry to being an agent. So these days, with the technology that's out there, people can set up in their back bedroom and actually service 90% of what estate agents do. There's always going to be a bit that's needed for estate agents, but it's the efficiencies that need to change within the industry.
If you were advising an estate agent today on how to get into the London market, and let's be honest, London isn't one big market, it's like a little like a fly's eye, what would you be telling them to try and break through and get more of a bigger slice of a smaller pie?
Well, I've always been a massive fan of the knowledgeable independent. My wife used to say to me she wished I'd gone off and set up on my own 25 years ago.
Because we're in the offices of Douglas and Gordon now, as you can see we've got the nice logo at the back, which you basically were here for about 17, 18 years, something like that?
More, I was here for nearly 25 years.
Wow, there you go. You
I
get
built
less
Chelsea up. Well, I built Chelsea up and then was running the company for 3 or 4 years before I left. I'm still a non-exec here. I still love the business.
That's why we're using this lovely room. So
absolutely.
Thank you very much.
It's nice and cool on a hot day. But the issue for small independent companies is that they can get to know their local area. I mean, Douglas and Gordon is a big company, it's 18 offices, but I've always been in awe of the people who set up in their own area. They know the area really well. They come to dominate their own area, not dominate, but they're one of the go-to agents. Lots of people who've worked for Douglas and Gordon went off and set up on their own and did really well. And if you know your local area and you're prepared to put in the hard work, you can build a very good brand locally.
Do you think agents are expected to come a bit easy to them when they set their own agency up? Lazy?
I think estate agents have had a bit of that for a very long time, that feeling that things can come easy is entirely the wrong word. I really do not want to denigrate some of the hard work that goes into it. I think the problem with agency is the other side of the coin is the efficiencies of the people that work within it. And I think that having people who tend to sit around waiting for things to happen as a very expensive fixed cost is a very difficult thing to justify. When I first started, or when Foxtons first started, Douglas and Gordon used to have 3 or 4 sales negotiators in an office. Foxton suddenly had 25 people in an office, and it was massively impressive. The public loved it. Now, if you go around, you'll see Foxton's offices have got 6 or 7 people in them again. So clearly, it was a big issue for people.
What one piece of advice would you give to a London agent finding it hard work at the moment to try and survive and even thrive in this market? From a man that's been there, done
well,
it.
I think if I was going to give advice to a London agent who wants to make it in this market, I'd say make sure you're in lettings.
That's the hard bit, getting hold of the landlords and getting them to swap. But that's the eternal question, isn't it?
But you see, even the landlord question has become an issue. With Section 24, the 2015 Finance Act, suddenly landlords, a lot of them are getting negative income, or they will be within the next year or two. So they're searching around for ways. I mean, I've had some fascinating talks with people. You know, there's a company, Somerset Estates REIT, Buy-to-Let REIT. Some of these people who started up who give agents the opportunity to suggest to their landlords that they swap their units for a REIT. All people want with most properties when they're investing in them is to get some income from them. That's what they want. So people are looking around for ways to try and keep their income, and there are ways to do it. But lettings is not as simple as it used to be. But rather like 08, 09, if you're not in lettings at the moment, you're probably going to be having a very hard time in London.
Thank you very much. Cheers.